بسم الله والحمد لله وصلى اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. I thank Allah Ta'ala for the blessing of Islam, and I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us the sincere intentions. Ramadan, as you know, is an important worship. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala characterized it in a great way in his hadith, in the hadith that he revealed to Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And it is a hadith Qudsi. Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, in this hadith, he said, كل حسنة بعشر أمثالها إلى 700 ضعف إلا الصيام فإنه لي وأنا أجزي به. So what does it mean إلا الصيام إلا الصيام فإنه لي وأنا أجزي به? Here Allah Azza wa Jal is making a distinction for fasting. And this means that it is a great blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal. And by fasting, Allah may forgive for the person all his sins. By fasting, Allah would forgive for the person all his sins. And in fact, the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith, he mentioned that there is a deed in which only Allah Ta'ala knows its reward. And he mentioned that this deed is to fast. And in the hadith also, the Prophet mentioned that one of the fasting, one of the rewards of fasting, that by the end of the fast, the persons who have been fasted, Allah will forgive their sins. And when the Prophet was asked, was that during the night of Laylatul Qadr, he said, it is not during the night of Laylatul Qadr. It is it is at the time when the month of Ramadan ends. It is at the time when Ramadan ends, because this is when those who work their work will be paid their compensation. So Allah will forgive the sins of the people. And in another hadith also, the Prophet ﷺ, he divided the month of Ramadan, rahmah, mercy. The second is maghfirah, forgiveness. And the third, itqum minan nar, the person will be freed from hellfire. So there's a lot of reward in fasting. And in fact, also, if you go over the privileges that Allah Ta'ala granted to fasting, you will find that those who fast properly, Allah will forgive them by fasting, except those two who have been in hatred to one another for no Islamic reason. Two Muslims who have hatred to one another. And this second type, a mushrik who is not a Muslim. So Allah will forgive for the person his sins by virtue of fasting, as it has been mentioned in these hadiths and others. And fasting comes up to the point that it is like as-salah, like az-zakah, like al-hajj. In what way? Because it is one of the 5 important matters, or arkanul Islam, 5 important matters of the religion. And it has been obligated in the second years of Al-Hijrah, and the Prophet fasted for 9 years. The rules of fasting are plenty, but the important part here, the important part is that fasting has 2 conditions one has to satisfy: the intention to fast the day, the intention to have the intention to fast that day, and to abstain from introducing any foreign object into one's body cavities through the open inlets. Now we can pause here and think a little bit about when Ramadan will become due. when you say that now is to fast the time of Ramadan. And the fasting, by the way, is not only a particular practice of the nation of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam, but it was also the practice of previous nations, although it hasn't been mentioned that they fasted Ramadan, the month of Ramadan. So now why are we pausing at this important issue? And I wish that I have prepared more today to go over more details about the issue of observing the moon, because this matter is very important. So just to give you some highlight, we say that the Muslims will fast by observing the moon. Why do we do that? We do that because of the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Sumu لرؤيته وأفطروا لرؤيته فإن غم عليكم فأكملوا عدة شعبان 30 يوما." And this hadith is narrated by Al-Bukhari and Muslim and other ulama, other muhaddithin and huffaz, ashab al-sunan among them. So this hadith is the key. When you say the Muslims have decided to fast the month of Ramadan, so the first question you ask, have you observed the Hilal of Ramadan? Now, if you observe the Hilal of Ramadan, there's no issue because this is what we need to do. But if you did not, then what rule are you following in order to fast? I mean, the Prophet did not give a substitute here for another rule. He was clear that you do the fasting based on citing the hilal. But if you didn't cite the hilal because it has been blocked because of something, you were not able to see it. Maybe there is a cloud or there is a a storm or a lot of sand by which you could not see the moon. So what do you do? Okay, so this is an issue. How did our ulama resolve this issue? Let's look. The way the ulama resolved this issue is that they turned into the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Because he said, if you didn't see it, if you didn't see the moon, فَأَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةَ شَعْبَانَ. Yani the answer is there also in the hadith. So you go to finish Sha'ban 30 days. So the month is either 29 or 30 days. On the 29th, you go and you look for the moon of Ramadan, 29th of Sha'ban. Did you see it? The issue is resolved. You didn't see it, you finish another day of Sha'ban until it is 30 days, and then you fast Ramadan. So why are we making this a big issue? Why are some people not satisfied with observing the moon? Why they are not satisfied? For what reason they trying to supersede the rule of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? That's the issue. That's the issue. The issue is not being compliant with the hadith, not being compliant with the ijma' of the ulama. Okay, so they say we want to do the calculation. In Islam, you can use the knowledge that you learned in school to advance your religion. There's nothing wrong in that, but not in this case. If you say I want to build a super clock to tell me about the time, okay, build that super clock. You want to use different techniques in making this clock very precise, we will not argue with you. You want to use it so that you observe using this clock, and then you see the time, and then by this clock you can pray, not by calculating the time, by observing and saying, now you say observing, we observed it at let's say the Zuhr comes at 1:30, for example. Then you know that Zuhr comes at 1:30, and your super clock is telling you that now it's 1:30. So how did you know the clock is? How did you know that Zohar is at 1:30? Because you observed. If you build this super clock and you say, "I want to use it to sight the moon," you cannot use it to sight the moon because your super clock is not part of this hadith. You see the problem? The super clock is not part of this hadith. You can't say, "I'm going to use my clock to calculate when the moon is going to come in." Okay, what is the proof for that? You don't say that we Muslims, we want to use the technology and it is part of our religion. We are not speaking about this matter. We are speaking here about a religious matter. So the ulama did not find a substitute. There's no substitute for observing. If there had been a substitute, you could do that, but there's no substitute. And this is not something new. During the time of the Prophet, there were those people who knew about these matters, how you do the observation through the astrological, or who do the calculations through astrological means. And during the time of the companions and after, many came into the religion and they had this knowledge, but the Muslims did not consider that noteworthy. It wasn't worthy for them to follow these ways of calculation. And this is by the agreement of the four schools. This is not something we as Hanafi or Shafi'i just saying, but this is also according to the four schools and beyond the four schools as well. So there are rules in our religion, there are rules, and Allah Ta'ala knows about the hikmah of these rules, and this is what we have learned about that. And when you want to fast, there's also another set of rules that the person who's telling you about sighting the moon has to have certain qualities. He has to be a trustworthy person, free, and he is known not to lie. Now let's take the fact that he is trustworthy. What do we mean by that? It means that this person doesn't commit enormous sins. He doesn't insist on doing the small sins, and he complies with the rules or the attitude, the behavior of people in his rank, people in his status. If he was, for example, a alim, he would reflect the behavior of a alim like it is known in his city, in his country. They give a lot of examples. There's actually, I found a book written by one of the ulama about this matter. They call it Khawarim al-Muru'ah. Khawarim al-Muru'ah means the person is behaving in a way that doesn't fit him based on his status. A alim, for example, they will tell you that he might walk around without putting a head cap, or he might be eating a sandwich in the marketplace, something similar to that. So this khawarim al-murwa is not something haram. It's not haram, but it is not appropriate for a person in the status of a alim to do these matters. So they say then he is not trustworthy in reflecting about this issue. Now, this is what we refer to the person being trustworthy, and the rule also that you take the statement of a male who is pubescent, not a boy or a woman, and not a person who is a fasiq. A fasiq is a person who commits enormous sins. So you know that he's not trustworthy. He's not adil. Has to be adil. Adil in the eyes of the Muslims. So when he testifies at the court to the judge, he's known that he's adil. And also, you don't take the saying of the slave. The slave is also not counted. He is owned by someone else. So, if on the other hand, if someone of those people, like the woman, the boy, or the fasiq, the enormous sinner, or the woman, or the slave, have seen, one of them have seen the moon, and you know that this person doesn't lie, and you trust them in their saying, you can fast for yourself. But the judge won't fast, and they would fast for themselves. So in this case, when the judge wants to approve the statement of the person who have cited the moon, we say one person is enough. Why? Again, because of the hadith. Sayyidina Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he sighted the moon, so he saw it. So he went to the Prophet and he told him that I sighted the moon. It was clear to me that the moon is there. So the Prophet fasted and he ordered the Muslims to fast. So what did they conclude? They conclude that if one trustworthy Muslim male uh, fasted, sighted the moon, it is permissible to take his word for fasting. So he would fast, and those whom he would tell them about fasting will also will fast. Now, going back to this issue of calculation, sometimes they say a statement which is not a good statement. They say we want to unite the Muslims and we want to bring them together by fasting one day, all of us, the same day. At the same day, we want them to fast. And we don't want disunity, and we don't want people to follow different sayings about fasting and this and that. Okay, what's wrong with this argument? This argument is wrong. What's wrong with it? What's wrong with it is, number one, there's no disunity in following the Shara. If the Shara implies and dictates that the Muslims have to observe the moon, and in some areas they may observe or not, in some other areas they might not observe the moon, then what is the judgment here? There is provisions in Islam that those who did not sight the moon will not follow others who sighted the moon, who have sighted the moon. So are you saying now that this is disunity? And this is the madhab of Al-Imam Shafi'i and Al-Imam Malik and Al-Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. Are you saying then the Muslim scholars, the ulama, and there were also sayings from the companions about that matters as well, like that. They did not care about unifying the Muslims. So this logic falls apart when it comes down to following the Shara. What we care is the Shara. What we care about is the Shara. We don't care about the philosophy of some people who try to justify the the ends by not following the proper means. Okay, so they are trying to replace the rule by an unstated rule. Now, what is this issue about observing in two different locations? This issue is very simple. If the judge in one area, I'm talking about trustworthy Muslim judges who care about following the rules. If a Muslim judge in one area has been told that the moon is sighted, then he will he will verify that, and then will order the people to fast, will issue the proclamation that tomorrow is the day of fasting, and then the country, let's say a country, the state, the whole state will fast. This whole state could be like maybe having two, three different time zones. Okay, it could be like the Muslim state when it stretched beyond Baghdad. It was a big state, so there were more than one time zone for the people living in the Muslim state at that time. So now the question is, how come that people who are far away are fasting by the observation, let's say, of Baghdad, or the observation of Khurasan, or the observation of Al Hijaz. How come? Because in the Sharia, the provision by the ulama who made the ijtihad, they decided that it's enough to take the saying of the judge. One judge who decided properly about the fasting or about the end of Ramadan, both of them, depending upon following the rules of deciding the end of fasting as well, where two witnesses are needed, not just one. This judge will declare and the others will follow. That's in the Hanafi school. So this judgment is enough for those who are talking about disunity to hold to, because okay, you want to follow one decision, follow the Hanafi school. When you find a country that have decided properly about fasting, follow them. So the issue is resolved. You want unity, here you go. Take your unity that you are looking for. In the Shafi'i school and other schools, in the four schools, they say each location has to fast based on its observation, its own observation. They can take the observation of another country or another city based on the consistency of observation, al-matali', ittihad al-matali', the unionship of the matali', meaning what? Meaning these areas like not far apart a lot. Their sunrise time and sunset time are common. Okay, like they are maybe apart about 80 kilometers, less than 2 days of travel. Then you can say those people will fast together. Like say for example, um, you take uh, you take Tripoli in Lebanon, Tripoli, and you take for example Homs in Asham. There is a distance between Homs and Tripoli, but they have the same matla. They can fast together. If you go to Beirut or north to down to Saida, south to Saida in Lebanon, also the same thing happens. Those have the same sunset time and sunrise time. So each city that has the same matla with another city, they can fast together like that. But not the whole body of Muslims will fast together, because they fast based on the observation of each location. That's the difference between the Hanafi school and other schools. And in the Hanafi school, going back to the Hanafi school, when the judge wants to decide about fasting, he would be looking for other than just one observation. Yes, one observation would be enough. But at the same time, he would be looking whether there are others who have observed, like a day or a night that doesn't have any cloud. There's no clouds. There are no clouds. And people have the ability to observe. So he is expecting more people to come in and say that this is now the day of fasting. Tomorrow is the day of fasting. So this becomes for him a definite answer that tomorrow is the beginning of the day of Ramadan, or it is based on the proper fasting of proper observation of people, that it is the end of the fasting. So this mas'ala has two branches. The first branch is for the beginning of Ramadan. One trustworthy Muslim male has to confirm the observation. In other months, and the end of the fasting, the end of Ramadan, beginning of Shawwal, two trustworthy Muslims are needed. Okay, do you have any question about this?